morning, all, and thank you for joining us for the webinar on facilitation, unlocking its true power. I'm Purva Marwaha from People Matters and will take you through the agenda for today's webinar. We have the privilege of having with us Vinay Kumar, Principal Consultant and Director of C2C Consulting and Training. A little about today's webinar. This webinar session will help you to explore the value of process facilitation and how it is the surefire way for engagement within organizations. We will briefly differentiate between content and process facilitation and also explore where organizations are using process facilitation. A few global case studies will be shared on how organizations have enabled change initiatives using facilitation. This discussion will also help you understand how this can be used in organizations with detailed discussion on the following pointers. Know the core competencies of a facilitator. Be able to identify where organizations can deploy process facilitation techniques. A little about our today's speaker. Vinay Kumar is the Principal Consultant and Director at C2C Consulting and Training. Vinay, after spending a short time in international banking, moved to training and development. Over the past decade, Vinay has worked in the US, the Middle East, and Asia. Vinay has been actively involved in the International Association of Facilitators and is a certified professional facilitator. He has worked with various organizations in creating efficiencies across global teams through training and development, consulting, and facilitation efforts. His areas of specializations for the last few years has been in helping organizations increase and enhance efficiencies and leadership capabilities in global virtual teams. He has delivered programs across Asia Pacific, Europe, North and Central America. He has delivered programs in over 20 countries. Our partners for today's webinar for helping us make this program possible is C2C Consulting and Training, which is a global learning and organizational development consultancies that specializes in developing contextual OD solutions through facilitated discussions with their stakeholders by sourcing and developing relevant content and by building from the design stage a methodology to demonstrate value. With its global footprint and offices in China, India, Malaysia, Singapore, and the US, C2C has learned how to leverage their own organizational diversity to become an agile and innovative partner to enable its clients to create the conditions for their success. We have saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webinar. For those watching the live webinar, you can submit questions at any time during the presentation through the question and answer section. We will try to respond to as many questions as time allows. We have a full exciting agenda for the webinar today, so without any further delay, I'm going to hand over the webinar microphone to Vinay. Over to you, Vinay.
Great. Thank you, Purva. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session. Thank you for taking time out from your busy day and attending the session. I'm going to go very quickly, and I'd like to actually leave more time for Q&A at the end. So really from a facilitation perspective, the purpose of this webinar, as Purva mentioned, is to get you aware a little bit more about how facilitation and, well, what it is and how it's used more effectively in organizations. So really quick, I mean, just back to basics for a few seconds, is facilitation comes from the Latin word to make things easy, facilis. It's really about the act of making something easier for people. In an organizational context, it's used mainly from the definition of the final one bullet point you see there. It's the act of assisting or making easier the progress of improvement of something. Now, what is that something? Before we get into that, I just want to do another quick differentiation here, because the word facilitation is often, I won't say abused. It's used very vastly with multiple meanings. For the purposes of this webinar, I'm actually focusing on the context of process facilitation. So I want to differentiate here from the content and process. Content facilitation is what is discussed. You will hear a lot of trainers and consultants who talk about that they are training facilitators, or they say they're not trainers, but they're facilitators. Um, However, a large part of what they may do is really bring in content into the room. From the pure process facilitation is focusing on how things are discussed. So if you imagine this to be a scale, content is one end of the scale and process is at the other end of the scale. We may have teaching facilitation. I worked with a school very recently where we were enabling teachers to become more facilitators and create processes and include various mechanisms in the way they teach that actually gets the participants to do more of the work. So that would be somewhere more towards content, but incorporating facilitation. We also have we also have the whole aspect of what we call teaching or training facilitation. We have people who stand up and go through 200 slides and really do not enable much discussion, or there may be other trainers / facilitators who may use a lot of group interactive processes in a workshop or in a training environment. So that again falls somewhere in the middle. For the purposes of this webinar, again, I am focusing on the pure process facilitation component. By the way, Purva, I noticed many folks are mentioning something about audio. Do you want me to pause for a few minutes while we get that fixed? I can see a few people are struggling with the audio. So again, for the purposes of the webinar, as I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on the process facilitation component. So what is a process facilitator? A process facilitator here, I'm going to use the two most commonly used definition from Benz and Doyle's leaders in our field, is a process facilitator is one who contributes a structure and process to various interactions so that groups are able to function. They do not bring any content expertise into the room. They may be having that content expertise, but they prefer to be neutral, what we call them neutral facilitators, and do not actually share some of their expertise in there. As Doyle said as well, process facilitator is somebody who enables groups and organizations to work more effectively, brings in collaborative processes, and again, the emphasis is on being a content neutral party who does not take sides, does not express their personal opinion, or doesn't advocate a point of view. What we mean by content neutral, and this is very important to understand, we may have a manager who's facilitating a conversation on strategy. If the manager is going to add their inputs on where the strategy for the team, for the organization, for the business unit should be, then they do not become a content neutral party. So a process facilitator is better when they're playing the role of facilitators and they choose not to contribute their opinion. So just if you're thinking already, then the best person to play the role of facilitator in that meeting is probably not the manager from that business group, is to get a process facilitator from a different business group who does not have a vested interest in the outcome of that needs to be achieved. Right? So I hope that makes sense. And probably throws up a few more questions for you as well. So moving on from why do we need process facilitators and where that would come in, just a little bit of interesting data for you. A couple of studies, why facilitation, and for those of you from the organizational context, I hope these statistics resonate for you and probably make sense. A study in 2001 by Romano and Nunemaker, they actually looked at meetings and finding out what was happening in meetings. And it said that frontline and middle managers spend over 9 hours a week in meetings per employee. I personally think it's much higher, but it does say over 9 hours. And another study by Strategy in Business more recently, it said that 85% of participants felt most meetings are ineffective. They do not achieve what they set out to do. So if you look at these two studies, and both studies actually, happy to send you links to them later, or do reach out to me if you want these detailed reports. But just think about productivity loss in organizations from just being in meetings that are not effective. I was working with an organization that had a question that said, how is, how much money, why should we have process facilitators? What's the benefit? I actually asked them the reverse question, how much is being lost? And they did the math, and they found out that with 500 employees attending on average 9 hours of meetings a week, you can calculate the total number of hours and multiply it by the average cost per employee, per hour if you want, or per day. And you can just see the math that's adding up. So for those of you from HR, human resources and organizational development, that's functions, that is a great mathematical study to be doing, just to take a look at what's the benefit of having pure process facilitators. A lot of the first study there from Romano actually says that it was a primary research study. They actually said that death by PowerPoint in meetings, which tends to happen a lot of people just tune out. And how does that add to effectiveness? Again, I want to reiterate, we're not saying that all meetings are ineffective. We often find that the meetings that are facilitated or the style of the person running the meeting often drives meeting success and effectiveness. So that really makes the business case for those of you who are ever wondering, what's the business case for process facilitation? We know content facilitators, but why process facilitators? So where are organizations using facilitation? Some of the most obvious ones, obviously in all regular meetings, face-to-face, virtual. One area that a lot of organizations actually think about bringing in a process or a meeting facilitator is often in strategy vision workshops, or when we're looking at quarterly business reviews, planning sessions at the beginning of a financial year, or review sessions at the end of a financial year or quarter. Often the role of the facilitator there is seen as critical. Facilitation can also be used in any change management initiatives. When you've got a group of people in a room together discussing change, impact of, you may have a content expert there. You may also need a process facilitator in that situation. On the right, just want to draw your attention to the image on the right. For any of you from technology organizations that may have moved to an agile software development methodology, you may have heard of the concept of Scrum Masters. You may have, or various others. But in agile teams, an agile development methodology, facilitation is called out quite significantly, that you do need agile team facilitators. They become a container for the team to create the content, as the image rightly says. So one of the things to think about is, for those of you who are in development and those kinds of situations, what is the role facilitation can play? Any conflict resolution situation, any time you have groups getting together where there is a difference of opinion and you really want a high degree of engagement, process facilitation plays a significant role. One of the examples that I want to give you for a regular meeting and a conflict resolution situation where we've worked with organizations to bring in process facilitators, all hands meetings. Those happen, lots of people show up, there may be a few slides shown, Q&A session happens, and people go on. Several of our clients have done studies in what's the effectiveness of it, why are we doing it, are people really showing up, are they getting value out of it? We changed the structure of the all-hands meeting. It's still get everybody together, but they've added processes that can be used to engage participants. And we saw the effectiveness, engagement, result, and output all go up. For a conflict resolution situation, one of the companies we are aware of brought in internal folks to be pure process facilitators in union and management conversations. They brought them in. They were internal folks, mutually decided by both union and management, and they essentially just facilitated the conversation. They did not take any stance on any of the content being discussed. So this is just to differentiate. This is not mediation we're talking about. This is facilitation, right? So there's just as an example for those of you to kind of keep that in mind. So the change management initiatives is critical. Obviously, the conflict resolution situation and any situation that you might feel you want to enhance group effectiveness. The role of facilitation becomes useful. So if that's where process facilitators play a role, and I again want to reiterate the key point that's there on the slide, which is the content neutral that's there in the image. The process facilitator is content neutral, right? So if they're content neutral, they do not bring in their views, opinions. They just create a process and they manage the dynamics and ensure everyone stays engaged. So how do you develop facilitator competencies? The leading organization in the world in process facilitation is the International Association of Facilitators, and several decades ago, in fact, they came up with the definition of what a facilitator competency is, and they identified 6 core competencies. I'll go through a couple of them in detail. The competencies at a high level are, first, the ability to create collaborative client relationships. I want to focus on the word client here. If I am a process facilitator in HR within a company and a business unit has called me in to facilitate their quarterly business review, that business unit is my client. The stakeholder, the leader of the business unit, others are all of my other stakeholders within that business unit are my clients. So the word client here refers to both internal as well as external. The second one is planning appropriate group processes, the ability to identify right kinds of processes, and I'll talk about a few of them in a little while. The first 2 happen before the facilitator even walks into the room to engage a group. The third and the fourth happen in the room. The facilitator's ability to create and sustain a participatory environment. Does everybody get engaged? Does everyone participate? What methods do I use? How much time? All of that goes in there. The fourth is to ensure that the group achieves the desired outcome for that meeting, whatever it might have been. So the desired outcome is defined by step 1 in the collaborative client relationship. The fifth and sixth are really about how does the facilitator develop their own skills and engage and learn new processes. And the last one is really about the ethics of being a professional facilitator. So it's really here about the ability to act with integrity, not take sides, not favor anyone's opinion, to learn to be content neutral. All of these competencies and the detailed definitions are there. But for the purpose of the webinar, I'm just going to go through a couple of those. So I'll go through the first one, which is very important for all of you from an internal organizational perspective. There are the three important ones here is what do we mean called sub-competencies. The first is developing the working relationship and partnership with the client. What is the role, right? What's the importance of it? How much time am I going to be given? We often get clients who say, I've got 1 hour and I want the group to get aligned and I identify and align on 10 priority areas for next year. If you're going to try and do that in 1 hour, is that even feasible, right? And by the way, I want to set the context for the first 20 minutes, right? If the leader says that, then you really got 40 minutes. It's virtually impossible. So all of those happen there. Well, what's the analyzing the organizational environment? What's the stakeholders? Are they engaged? Are they open? Define those outcomes. So all of these go into stage one itself. The managing multi-sessions. So you may decide to roll out 6 to 7 of these meetings within a business group. So how is that going to happen? What's the information that will flow from one group to the other, right? Once you have all of that aligned, you go to the second, which is a very critical competency for internal facilitators. The first one is the ability to select methods and processes that are appropriate for the outcome. So this is it PowerPoint? Are we going to use various different tools, the sticky wall? Are we going to use flip charting? Are we going to use all of that stuff? What's the energy of the group? Is it post-lunch? What's the diversity in the team, et cetera? The second one is really about the time and space, the logistics. You might find 2.3 as an interesting sub-competency. It's even provide effective atmosphere and drama for these sessions. In an Indian context, the word drama has many meanings, but from a facilitation perspective, what's the seating in the room going to be? Is it going to be clustered? Are we going to be sitting in a U shape in a boardroom, or are we going to be sitting with no tables? We had the management in the union meeting, which we talked about. Another client I know just did that completely. When everyone walked into a room, there were no tables and chairs. It was what's called open space, and everyone just sat on the floor in a large circle and had a meeting. It was extremely uncomfortable. One of the significant things was it created equality for everybody in the team, everybody who was in that room. Right. So those are two of those that come in there. Now, to give you an example of some of the group processes, there are several group processes that are used. Some of you may be familiar with some of them. The first one is very often we call them convergence and divergence tools. Divergence is various tools to seek as many opinions as possible. So it could be each one of you take 3 Post-it notes, 1 Post-it note for idea, post it on the wall. Each person must have at least 3 ideas. So this creates equality. Everyone has to contribute. Some people who want to contribute more than 3 may choose to do so. So that would be divergence. Convergence would be tools like polling, voting, clustering, etc. We also have TOP, which is a technology of participation. One of the things we say in facilitation is when you move from one slide to the next, that slide has gone off the screen. So in a lot of the facilitation, we have no slides. It's flip charts that stay on the wall. They become memory walls. We also have LSIP, which I know a lot of organizations are familiar with. This is the large-scale integration processes. We've done sessions where we've got anywhere from 200 to 600 people in a room. And there are processes that you can design that will make such large groups achieve one common outcome. Or we have open space technology, which allows you to use the room in a very different way. The image that you see up there is just an interesting image, that an activity that we used as a process where everybody identified one person and had to go and interview them and share. This was part of their annual sales meeting when we had everybody in a room. Right. We also have this big thing around visual facilitation today. This is not being used a lot in India. It's being used a lot in Europe and in Asia as well. This is where we have people who are capturing the entire conversation that's happening in the room in a visual format. So this is the summary of the entire journey of conversation that may have happened. So these are visual graphic facilitators who are at the back of the room who are, just they're given a large canvas and they keep going while there may be two facilitators, one facilitating the conversation and the other at the back capturing this. For those of you who want to know more about this, there is a great TED video on visual facilitation. It's by Ted Wujek. He talks about how simple facilitation and engagement is a lot about using the right side of the brain. Yes, doing all the data that's there, but using the right side of the brain. And visual facilitation is quite a powerful tool when you think about it. It should be Tom Wujek, sorry. Tom Wujek has a great TED Talk on this. So you might want to make a note of his video. Again, so we talked about some of those techniques. To kind of go back to the competencies we were discussing, we also have that create and sustain a participatory environment. That's the third competency there. This is in the room, right? This is very critical for a facilitator where they have the effective participatory and interpersonal communication skills. This is just the behavioral aspect of it, but the competency C2 is ensuring that everyone is participating, keeping an eye on the room, making sure that if you have somebody who's not participating, to kind of create opportunities for them to contribute. It's also something that we contract out. An example, the first competency and the third one play a role here as a simple facilitator rule. If you have a hierarchical leader in the room along with his or her subordinates, and we say, let's think about 3 priorities for next year. A simple social contracting that's done before with the leader is let everyone put their Post-it notes and the leader goes last. Right? Because we all know what would happen if the leader goes and puts their ideas first. We may have several people who may or may not put the same things, but it still sets the tone. So that's about creating the environment, the climate of safety and trust for everyone to contribute. Within the same, it's also in competency C and D, the ability to manage group conflict, ability to manage people who may be much more vocal than others, and allow that. And a very important competency, as I mentioned earlier, is to allow the right side of the brain to play a significant role, is to evoke group creativity. So these are, there's a lot of other competencies, but I'm not going into detail. So where is facilitation being used in India? Who could you draw on for role models and some leading edge stuff? NGOs and development institutions have been using community-based facilitation for years and decades. I know the World Bank has been doing community-based facilitation in many of their projects. 2 companies I want to specially mention, or 3 of them, is Asian Paints created a huge pool and panel of internal facilitators. They're using facilitation in terms of all-hands meetings, employee engagement conversations, at plants, engaging with workers, unions. They've got a very, very strong practice in this. And so does Tata Power. They've also been in the process of using various processes and methods in all aspects of their business. Standard Chartered Bank is probably one of the organizations globally that has an internally qualified and certified pool of facilitators that any operation worldwide can draw on them. So the CPF, the Certified Professional Facilitator, which is one of the credentials here, it's like the ICF or the coaching, the facilitation certification. Standard Chartered probably has the world's largest number of CPFs internally in any organization. And several other multinationals with dedicated OD teams have got people qualified in facilitation competencies. So these are some of the organizations that are doing a lot of facilitation. To give you a little bit more context on this, so if you're thinking about, okay, we get it, so who can be these facilitators? I may have used HR as an example quite a bit, but not necessarily. OD practitioners, obviously, human resource professionals. I've got the one that, Asian Paints and Tata Power have got a group from their HR teams, and it's become the added value proposition that HR provides, whether it's the HR business partner or central HR functions. These are people that are now being called on. Just an example, we had a few internal facilitators being called to facilitate a conversation between customers and sales teams, dealers or distributors and sales, or logistics and dealers. They've been called. Line managers, very important. The more line managers you can get involved in picking up facilitation competencies, they start utilizing them in the regular meetings. They start utilizing them within the business. So they are a very significant collection of internal potential facilitators. The project management team, obviously, as I mentioned, the whole Agile and Scrum methodologies that we were talking about, the PMO office are ideal facilitators because they often play the role of coordinators, enablers, and there's a lot of synergy and overlap that can happen with the facilitation practice. So that's something for you to kind of be aware of as well. The next group of facilitators that you can also think of are leaders. I haven't called it out explicitly here, but leadership team with facilitation skills are very powerful change agents in organizations. Rather than imagine leaders coming in and playing a role for a period of time of being content neutral, but being process experts to draw the wisdom of the group. So one of the most important rules in facilitation and in the competencies that you will see when you look at the last one, right? Model professional attitude is always believe in the wisdom of the group and honor the wisdom of the group. It may not be exactly what you want to hear, but that's the wisdom of the group. That's the group that's got 100% ownership of what they're feeling and thinking. So imagine that, how much of an enabler that is from a leadership perspective. So that's something very critical to think about as well. So where do you begin? Where can you start to create internal facilitators? But before that, I just want to go in and share again with the competencies of facilitators there, because if you take a look at facilitator competencies, I've shared about creating collaborative client relationships, planning group appropriate processes, creating and sustaining that. The last two there is about facilitation is something that a lot of us feel we already know. However, the behavioral skills that are required is very critical when you're in front of a group. It can actually cause more damage if you think you're facilitating, but you're not doing it well. And the last one, the biggest challenge we have often seen for process facilitators is the ability to be content neutral. So those are things that we often say are the two most important things that you need to be able to do. So how do we do this? Just to, again, how do you begin? Pretty simple. Take a look at the IF website. There's both an IF World, the global organizations, as well as an India chapter, the ifindia.org, which organizes facilitation events, conferences. We had our India conference last year. Very interestingly enough, the Global Asia Conference, which happened in Singapore in 2014, in Japan 2013, is coming to India again. The last time it was in India was in 2011 in Bangalore. So it's coming back to India and is being held in Mumbai on August 20 to 22nd. The other thing to also possibly download and share with the team and have conversations about is the competencies for the CPF. I'm not necessarily advocating going in to get the qualification yet, but just being aware of what are the competencies, how can we incorporate that internally, how does it fit in or overlap with the CPF or our Agile Scrum Masters or any of our internal facilitators that we may have. And obviously, we at C2C also have a very strong facilitation practice where we go in and also become external facilitators are often called in, but also help develop internal facilitation teams along the lines of the competencies, identify the right people, skill them up, and qualify them, and help them document it as well. So those are some of the areas that facilitation can be used, and you can get started on that journey of facilitation as well. On that note, I'm going to open it up to any questions, etc. So Purva, I know a lot of people were having audio challenges, so I don't know if you managed to get any questions.
Yeah, no, Vinay, we did get a few questions. So one of our listeners wants to know how to organize resources for facilitation.
Okay, so there are. Okay, so without knowing what kinds of resources, I'll tell you that from a competency perspective, we look at 4 resource types. The first is obviously the physical facilitator, who is the person who's going to be doing it. The second is the operational logistics. That's the venue, room. That's based obviously on the design that's been created. The third is one of the most significant resources, which is time, that needs to be contracted with the business folks who are asking for it. And the fourth is material. So let me just go back to one of the images if I can. Let me see if I can jump a few slides. Sorry, I'm just going to go back and forth just to demonstrate. Right. Okay. So you may not see this. I don't know if you can see very in detail, but resources could mean everything from flip charts, pens, markers, space, tape, all of that. And I can tell you if you're going to do something like this, the sticky wall, the spray, all of this. So those are 4. I can tell you the fourth one is the easiest. And if you've got internal facilitators, the first one's the easiest. Socially contracting with your leader, the requester, and ensuring time and defining the plan is going to be very critical. Yep. Purva, any other?
Yeah, thanks, Vinay. So we have one more question. So what do you think role of internal facilitator is really?
That's a very good question. I would actually ask you to, so let me answer that. The role of the internal facilitator is to provide capability for quick, rapid deployment in regular day-to-day business in organizations. So if there's a quarterly business review that's happening next month for the sales team, and it's normally done with 100 present PPT slides over 4 hours or 5 hours, and people are feeling that it's not effective. How can we improve this? Because people get distracted, energy levels are low. That's when an internal facilitator can go in, design a process with the leader, agree on desired outcomes, and do it. So that's a very, very significant role that they can play and increase that meeting effectiveness. As I said earlier, strategy workshops. So there's plenty of day-to-day business stuff that's happening where internal facilitators can play a role. The caveat, though, is the more high stakes it is, and the less. So one of the things to think about is what is the credibility of the facilitator with the group. So if it's a quarterly business review that a sales team for a region is doing, and someone from OD or HR is going in to facilitate, I would say the credibility is going to be good, and the ability to be content neutral is probably going to be even better, especially if the practitioner is not from that region. Let's say is not the HR business partner for that region, or even if they are, right, to play that role. However, if you're going to be involved in a conversation with the senior leadership of an organization, you're going to be the process facilitator for the CXO levels who are all in a room, you might want to look at co-facilitating with somebody externally, because there may be sensitive conversations where people might want to, where people might not be comfortable sharing that with employees yet, right? So I think, if you go back to the statistics, if employees are spending at least 9 hours a week in meetings, that's a lot of meetings happening in organizations, and that's an opportunity for a lot of facilitation that could happen. Yep. So those are.
Thanks so much, Vinay, for. Yes, please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So those are some of the opportunities for facilitation, and hopefully it's an opportunity for all of you to think about process facilitation in your organizations.
Right. Thanks so much, Vinay, for that very insightful thought. So when we're talking about visual facilitation, we have a question saying, how is it the most important facilitation than any other? So how does visual facilitation really help?
So I would say visual facilitation is the group memory. And one of the things that when people walk out of a program or a meeting, they kind of, you have the minutes of the meeting, but a visual, creative recap of the entire conversation, the journey that led to the end result, is something that people often find is their takeaway. It's almost like when you do an offsite, one of the things that people have that the takeaway is the group photograph, but that's who all were there. The second one is, what was the journey of the conversations? And you will often find that people will take pictures of it. It's something that it's something that stays well beyond that facilitated event.
Right. Thanks, Vinay. So we don't really have many questions. So I think with this question and answer session, we are going to wrap up today's webinar. Once again, we thank today's webinar partner, C2C Consulting and Training. Finally, a very special thanks to Vinay, the speaker for this webinar, for his time and invaluable information that he has shared with us today. And I would also like to thank everybody in the webinar audience for participating in today's presentation. We will come back to you with many more. With that, it concludes today's webcast. Thank you and have a very good day.